Okay, I'm still audible now, right? All right. So today's meeting, knowledge sharing session is going to be about um, how to incorporate service design into product design. Um, right. So we are going to first talk about the business landscape. So why essentially this whole topic is important in the first place. And then we're going to talk about what service design is. And then we're going to talk about the principles of service design. Then we're going to talk about the factors. Sorry, who is that? Who is drawing marks on our screen? Now we're going to talk about the factors that influence service design integration into product design. And then we're going to talk about the tips for incorporating service design into product design. So first, the business landscape. Very few businesses like the service that they were getting from a particular business. I need feedback because the network can be very funny.
You're audible right now.
Yeah. All right. So have a lot of connections. So there was no internet. And what that means is, all services were physical. So if you didn't like your bank, you didn't have a lot of options because in that area, there was just that bank. Over time, with internet, with social media, with a lot of startups, springing up every 2 seconds, customers are spoiled for choice. So that means that if your product is not giving a customer exactly what they want, they have a myriad of other choices and they are going to leave you. Another thing is that customers now have access. So if before customers were only subjected to brick and mortar businesses, now customers can have access to online banks, online businesses. They can order things online. They can open banks without even going into any open accounts without even going into any bank. They can go to hospitals online. So customers can do a lot of things. So customers have access. And now there is also no geographical barrier. So the same way customers can have banks in Nigeria, bank accounts in Nigeria, customers can open bank accounts in Ghana or in the US. Customers can have access to products that are not within their geographical locations. So they have access to millions of products. Also access to social media. So what that means is customers share information, right? So if someone sees a product that they like, they can share it with 1,000 of their followers. And these days, I think there is a study that showed that every person has an average of at least 300 followers. So whether it's on Facebook, on Twitter, or on Instagram. So if they don't like your product, they have 300 other people they could tell. Meanwhile, before, they only had like maybe people within their family. So if they didn't like something, they couldn't vent beyond their, small cocoon. But now customers have a lot of access to a lot of people, so they have a bigger voice. And also, these days, a lot of other companies are improving their user experience, right? So because the competition has gone up, every company has improved their service, the services that they are offering. So what that means is that every other business also has to improve their game if they're even going to stand a chance, right? And then apart from that, there is also competition across industries. So customers are no longer just, comparing you to businesses that are within your industry. So customers would, for instance, compare McDonald's with Apple. They'll be like, okay, so this McDonald's is really messed up, and why they are saying McDonald's is messed up is because they are getting a very good service from an Apple store. So they now make comparisons across industries, because a lot of industries have now, become digital and, offering basically great services. And of course, a lot of companies are online. So they will always compare companies that are not even within the same industry. So there are now competition across industries and across borders, and customers have a wider audience. So it means if they don't like what you're doing, if they don't like the service that you've given them, they are going to blow it off. It's not just going to be them, it's going to be thousands of other people. So for instance, now you can see on the screen, these are tweets that shows, how people can react when they don't like your service. So I think the worst is this guy that took out an ad. You can see that this is a promoted ad. He took out an ad to say, don't fly British Airways. Their customer service is horrendous, right? And whenever someone made a statement, he designed it in such a way that whenever someone added British Airways in anything, this tweet will automatically be tweeted under, be shown to the person. So whenever someone is talking about British Airways, this tweet will automatically be shown to the person, and he promoted it that way. So you can see the lengths, people can go and now have the power to go, when they don't like your service. So what is service design, right? Service design is the activity of planning and organizing people, infrastructure, communication, and material components of a service in order to improve its quality and the interaction between service providers and customers. So essentially what this means is that service design is about designing an end-to-end journey. So you have to consider how a user can complete their goals, not just within the app or product that you're designing, but how is going to be within the general, ecosystem of what they have to do that day, even up to the point of the apps that they have on their phone. So you have to, for instance, Uber, for instance, considers the fact that people also have boats on their app or on their phones. People also have, InDrive on their phones. People also have Google Maps on their phones. People have calculators on their phones, right? So when you're designing, you have to basically, service designers will have to consider not just the app they are designing, but the fact that the phone even that they are designing has other apps in it, and the fact that the person that they are designing for had a life before they picked up that phone and had something that they were doing, the context in which they picked up the phone to even look at your app in the first place, and then what they are going to do thereafter. So you have to consider their end-to-end experience when you're designing. That's what service design is about. So service design will consider the full picture of the physical and digital experiences that customer will have before and after using the app. So you will need to look at the back systems that are there to support the customer. So basically things like the customer care, even the sales, the marketing, the technical team, and it's not just the technology. So you have to even consider even the people and the systems that are there to support the customer. And even beyond that, you have to consider even the wider context of the industry, other products and services in the industry, other systems, communities, processes, technologies, regulations, governments. So you have to consider all of that, when you are designing a service into the product. So here are some principles of service design. One is that it has to be human-centered, right? So of course, you are designing for human beings, so it has to be human-centered. So meaning that a human being has a life. So you are not designing for a bot, right? Where, AI doesn't have a life outside that phone. So, everything it's doing is starts and ends inside that phone, right? But a human being, has a family, he's hungry, He has other things that he has to do before meeting your phone or meeting your app or your product. And then he has other things he has to do after that. So you have to consider all of that. Also, it has to be collaborative. So when you're designing, you're not only designing as a designer, or you're not only collaborating with the engineering team. You're also collaborating with marketing. You're collaborating with sales. You are collaborating with customer care. You're collaborating with governments. You're collaborating with basically everybody, users as well, everybody within the industry. Then it's iterative, meaning that, of course, there's always room for improvement. So you're always going to, iterate and iterate until you get, basically a product or service that people are comfortable with. And it's also sequential. So meaning that you have to think of the sequence of the person's life, the sequence of events, that leads before, to, and after they use your product. It also has to be real. So you have to think of the real life scenarios, real life situations, real life people, right? The assets that you have, the policy in place, all of that, real issues that are that have to do with that product. And then it has to be holistic, of course. You have to consider end to end of everything. So some factors that influence service design are: one, policy. So these are the rules and practice, procedures, and workflows that a company, uses to provide the service. You also have to think of the company's assets. What do they have? Because, of course, the company's assets will determine the kind of services that they are able to offer. Then you also have to think of the company's culture, and generally the culture, of the people that you're providing things for. And then you also have to think of the people. So these are not just the, users. You also have to think of the service providers, everybody who is going to, play a role in making that service possible. Oh, sorry, give me a second. For some reason, this thing is not skipping to the next slide. 2 seconds, please. I think there must be an error here. Interesting. Sorry. There is a wiring error. Sorry. Just give me a second. Right. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. I can hear you.
Sorry, I don't know why it's not moving. All right, let me just present from here then. This is just. All right. So here are some tips for incorporating service design into product design. Mute your mic. All right. So first, you have to encourage the right behaviors, right? So you have to design in such a way as to encourage your users to do the kind of things or to take the kind of actions that you want them to take. So here, for instance, is a screen for an Uber, ordering a package delivery on Uber, right? And you can see here says request delivery. So let's say, for instance, sometime in the future, Uber decides that they want to go green, or say encourage people to go greener, right? So they introduce a button like this that's, allows people to either go for a fast delivery of 1 hour or go for a 4-hour delivery. And the thing here is that this design is in a way nudging them to choose a more eco-friendly delivery by explaining that this option is more eco-friendly. So of course the user understands that it's going to take them 4 hours as opposed to 1 hour, but then because it's eco-friendly, yeah, what the hell, they might decide to do it. So you have to ask yourself, is your design promoting the behaviors that you want to encourage your user to take? And in order to improve here, you want to read, there is a material called Design with Intent. Is a series of cards, like hundreds of them, I think 111 cards or so, that shows like how service design is incorporated into product design. There are also other literatures. Then you also have to design services, not websites or apps. So you're designing services, not websites or app. So I'll give a real life example of an instance, right? So someone at some point wanted to design an app that is going to help people order blood, like people who need blood urgently. They are going to go on the app and then they are going to request for the blood, and then they are supposedly going to get it. But after I asked the person a couple of questions, apparently there was no back end of how people are donating the blood. And if someone is not donating blood, where are you going to find blood to give? And of course, the person probably designed the thing coming from not being in the health industry, because if you are in the health industry, you'll understand that one of the big reasons why people don't get the blood they need is because there is not even enough blood in the blood bank in the first place, and Nigerians don't have a culture of donating blood for free. So what happens is that a lot of when people need blood, they have to pay somebody on the side to come and donate blood on their behalf. So designing an app like this, comes from a good, person probably has a very good intent of building this app, but it's just not going to work because there is no back end of people who are going to provide, that thing that you want somebody to request on this app. So when you are designing when you're designing services, basically, you're designing services into your products, you have to think of a holistic approach. You have to consider what is going to happen for the user and how it is going to be achieved and what impact that will have. So basically, when you have to think of the impact, because this is no longer a button. This request button here is not just a button. This request button is supposed to mean something. It means that a process goes on behind the scenes that is going to make blood available for this person. So when this person hits this request button, what exactly happens and how does that thing happen? So you have to think about that. So the questions you have to ask yourself is like, what are the mutually beneficial opportunities for the user and the business, and what impact is it going to have? So in order to train more on this, you need to, or in order to make this possible, you need to, start drawing big picture storyboards. So, generally when people want to draw storyboards of their product, they will just start with, when somebody enters their phone, and then when the person, hits buy and then leaves the phone, right? But you have to think of the big picture storyboard. So big picture storyboard is basically incorporating what happens before the person gets into the app, and then what happens after the person gets into the app, or after the person finishes what they are doing in the app that is now going to enable whatever it is that person did on the app to happen, right? So to train more on this, you can read Good Services, is a good book by Loudon. and also use service blueprints and value network mapping in your designing. So the next one, talk about your designs, right? So I think one mistake people make a lot is that they feel that they shouldn't talk about what they are building until they are done. So for instance, some people have this idea that if they talk about what they are building, someone is going to steal it from them, or generally they just, don't talk about things until, they've produced it. But you should actually talk about things you're building even before you start building it, because talking about it, is going to help unite. Okay, first of all, if you're working within an organization, it's going to help unite the staff, that is going to work with that product. And then it's going to, of course, unite your teammates, for the goal, and then it's going to even build a community. So let's say you're building an app, for instance, that app that we just saw that was supposed to give people blood, talking about it is, would help build that community of people that are going to now donate blood, right? Because if you keep talking about the problem that you're building for, and what are the challenges that you're facing, or the challenges that this could face, maybe you're going to now build a community of those blood donors, build a community of the people that are going to, need the blood, and that is going to help your product succeed. And is also going to, of course, build trust, because if people see the intent and see the history behind the product you are building, is going to help engender trust in whatever it is you're building. And of course, it's going to help build a network of supporters and advocates for your product. Again, your product is not just the product, it's the service, it's the effect, it's the impact that product is going to have. So what you should be asking yourself is, who can I invite in the design progress as I'm designing, and how are they going to be involved in that design process? So what you can do at this point, of course, in talking about your designs, is of course using applications like Medium to write about your product, using LinkedIn to talk about your product and its progress, social media, and any other platform that you can use really to publish your work to a wider audience. And then, of course, you can run co-creation workshops. So when you're designing, when you're building any product, you don't build on your own, you build in collaboration with everybody, including customer care. Because if everybody understands the details about your product, then they can even give you a hint on where, it's not going to be possible. I think one other example I want to give is someone built an app in the UK. Actually, apparently, it's illegal for people to dump refuse naturally, right? So so basically, the government has a website where you can go and report people who are dumping refuse, and then if you take a picture of it, maybe someone is going to come and, government is going to come and pick it up. But that website has not been very functional. It has some, errors. So someone built a better app that is going to make the reporting work better. But because the person didn't build it in collaboration with the government, right? So when all those requests were coming in, there was nobody on the back end to take action, So people are now, reporting, and then the government on this side has lots and lots of requests that, it's not even prepared to do anything about, right? So that is another reason why, you should talk about, your designs and involve stakeholders from the get-go as you're designing. Right, and also you should think about accessibility and inclusion, right? So when we talk about accessibility, people think we are talking about people who have a disability, maybe people who are blind, or people who are deaf, or people who basically have a mobile disability. But if you think about it, all of us can be disabled at some point in our lives, right? So, for instance, if you take the function of touching, right? Because you need touching to access your access your phone, right? Because you need your fingers when you're scrolling on your phone, right? So there are people who have a permanent disability in that they are amputees. So because they are amputees, they cannot use your phone, right? Imagine someone who doesn't have any hand, trying to scroll through an iPhone. That's going to be very difficult, right? So when you build solutions for those people, automatically you will also have built a solution for somebody who maybe had an accident and broke their arm for 2 weeks. That's temporary disability. Or somebody who is situationally disabled. Let's say they are carrying a baby, and because they are carrying a baby, they can no longer scroll on their phone. So by designing for the person who has a permanent disability, you've designed for the person who has to carry a baby. You're designing for somebody who is blind, you have designed for somebody who is in a dark room or who is driving. By designing for someone who is hard of hearing or deaf, you have designed for somebody who is in a loud environment, in a club, and they cannot really hear what anyone is saying on their phone. By designing for somebody who cannot speak, you have designed for somebody who is in a meeting and they cannot talk, right? So this is why it's important to think about accessibility, because it not only makes your product usable for people who have a disability, it makes your product usable at all times to all audiences, right? So recommendations, like when you're designing for someone with a permanent disability, of course, we talked about that. So you have to test your products with a wide range of people and make sure that it's accessible to everybody. I think there are some Figma plugins that is going to make your product more accessible, especially visually, because color contrast and all of that. Not everybody has. Some people have a visual disability where they cannot see different colors, color blindness. So there are Figma plugins that you can use to test your designs for accessibility. And also there is this book, Microsoft's Inclusive Design Toolkit, that you can pick up and read. Then ensure safety of your users' data and their privacy. Of course, like when you are, especially when you are collecting information from people, when you're collecting data from people, whether it's health data, whether it's bank details data, you have to make sure that you have a way of securing that data. So you don't collect data from your users if you don't have systems that are built to protect that data, or else you are going to put your users into a lot of problems, and of course you yourself, you're also going to face a lot of problems. So generally, even before you collect data, you have to ask yourself if you need this data, if this data is a requirement for the process that you want to go through. So for instance, if somebody does not need to put in their BVN before they can make a payment, why are you asking them for their BVN? So you have to think about that. And you also have to think about, even as you're collecting people's card details, do you have infrastructure to protect those card details from hackers? Right. So I think this is finally, you always have to consider the edge cases. So edge cases are cases that are not the ideal user flow, right? So typically, when you're thinking of how a user should use your product, you're only thinking about the happy path, basically the way of going from A to B to C until they achieve what they want to achieve, right? But that perfect straight line is never not always the case. In fact, mostly not even the case. So there are always going to be users who drop off at some point, maybe because they get confused, maybe because they spelled something wrongly. But at every point, you have to think about, all those edge cases or all those situations where something could not happen as expected. So for instance, Google has this search instead feature, where if you spelled something wrongly, they are going to show you a result for the correct spelling and then ask you if you actually needed to check that wrong spelling, right? And also, if, for instance, you have a user who has, for instance, forgotten their password, you have to have a way to have planned, the part where someone could have forgotten their password. So what do they do after they forget their passwords? There are people, for instance, who have forgotten their crypto passwords, and because of or crypto keys, and because of that, they are locked out of hundreds of millions of naira. So you don't want that to be your customer. You want to always provide pathways for your user to, get back into the happy track. So, for instance, we have this company that is Mint. You can see how beautifully they designed their page not available, and then giving the users an option, to go into their blog or go to basically other pages on the app. Right. So you have to ask yourself, what do we do when users get lost? What do we do when users are confused? When users need to complain, is there going to be anybody on the other side, of that screen to attend to their complaints? And how is that support structure? How is it, what's the infrastructure for that support structure? So generally, when you are building up flowcharts, you have to always consider edge cases and cases of, you have to consider all the cases where users can fail to move forward, and then have a plan for how to get users out of that. Right. I think that is all, even though my keyboard is no longer pressing. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right. I think that is all actually. Sorry, I didn't prototype this very well. I was rushing it because I had a lot of things to, yeah. Right. I didn't prototype it. So yeah, that is it anyway. So thank you very much. I will take questions if there are any.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian, for the amazing presentation. So, does anyone have any question for him? Let's use the next 5 minutes to tend to questions or concerns that might have been raised. Please just raise your hand if you have a question, or you could just unmute your mic and talk directly. Is there any question? Okay, so I'm guessing there's none. So in the absence of none, thank you once again, Brian, for this insightful presentation. I'm sure we've all learned a lot. So for my end, I have no contribution at the moment. Jeff, do you have something to say before we close this session?
Yeah. One.
Okay, wait. There's hands up. Sorry. Someone raised hand.
Are you guys all familiar with service design? There are no questions at all. All right. Whose hand is up? Victor, can I go on?
Yeah, please, you can go on.
All right. So, I'm very sure you guys are all familiar with product design, user experience, and user interface design. And it's basically is designed for how people experience the product, but mostly digital products anyway. Now, for every product that exists in this world, no matter what that product is, there's always a physical, non-digital side to how people experience that product. When they interact with customer service team, when they interact with brand touch points, when they use the product and they have a complaint, when the product, when they find that they encounter people that work for the company, etc. So what service design does is it takes recognition of all these processes and activities around what you are selling to customers and ensure that they are optimized to get service. So as UI UX designers, especially for us that work in health tech, all the things that we do are not, most of the things that we do don't stop on digital level. We have to interact with physical people. So I'll give you guys a very good example of one of our products and how we got to the point where we are. So Wella as a microinsurance product, which is our main product. That microinsurance product allows people to be able to get insurance for as low as 500 naira a month. Now, there are a lot of activities that went to that. If we are going to talk about the UI UX side of things, we are going to talk about how we built an account management and an online place for people to access their plan and for people to buy the plan. But the way we render microinsurance is way more than people just buying it. It involves people accessing that plan. So what we did was we thought around the service delivery of that plan and how best it is for people to be able to access it. Now, when you are sick and you have malaria in Nigeria, you either go to the hospital to get comprehensive care, holistic care. You go to the hospital, you talk to a doctor, they will do tests for you, they will get your drugs, go back home and come back. Maybe if they ask you to take injection, you have to come back to the hospital later, come back for more checkups. Now, when we looked at that journey, it's a very long journey. An average person do not have like hospital 2 minutes away from their house, right? They probably have to take a bus or cab or walk a certain distance to be able to get to, say, a secondary or tertiary institution like a general hospital or a teaching hospital or even a primary care center. When they get there, they will wait. They will queue in the waiting area. They will sit down and wait because everybody, in fact, 70% of outpatient visits in Nigeria is for malaria. So a lot of people are in the waiting area waiting to see one doctor, right? So they spend 30 to 45 minutes in that waiting area waiting for a doctor, right, to see a doctor. And when they finally see the doctor, they will sit in front of the doctor again, spend like another 15 to 20 minutes talking to the doctor. And then the doctor send them for tests. Then they are going to go and queue again and do tests. That's, let's say, another 30 minutes of queuing. They will take their blood sample, tell them to wait for the results, another 30 minutes. In fact, before they even go do tests, they will write receipt for them to go and pay. If you have been to any general hospital in Nigeria, you walk, the account departments might be so far from the emergency that you walk like 30 minutes to pay. They've gone to pay, joined another queue, come back with the results to the doctor, join another queue to see the doctor again. Finally see the doctor writes prescription for them. They have to go and pay again, then take the slip to the pharmacy. Do you see how crazy that journey is? So for one person to be able to get care for malaria treatment, they spend around 2 hours, 3 hours in the hospital trying to get access to care. So what is the role of service design in this kind of problem? So what Wella Earth thought was, how do people currently solve this problem? They don't want to spend 2 hours in the hospital, 3 hours in the hospital. I mean, they are losing valuable time, right? So what do people do? If I ask anybody, let's do it. Peace. When you start feeling like you have malaria, what do you usually do? Where do you go to? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm talking to Peace.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so Peace, where do you have malaria symptom? Where do you go to? Where do you visit? Nathan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
So Newton, when you have malaria, where do you go? What do you do? Like, I feel like I'm having a headache, my body is paining me, I'm running temperature. Where is the first place you go to?
To the hospital, sir, to run a test.
Have you ever gone to the pharmacy first to say, I feel like I have malaria, let me go and buy anti-malaria?
Yes.
How many times versus going to hospital have you done that?
I think the pharmacy
Yes.
is more, it's more like it's more convenient to people around, and it's more accessible.
Yes. So people, like, if you ask almost everybody on the call, everybody goes to the chemist first, pharmacy straight.
Yes.
Because of two main things. You recognize that symptom already. I mean, you've had malaria 1,000 times, so you know how it feels like. Two, the pharmacy is like a few minutes away from your house. There's one community pharmacy in your area that is close by. There is always one, right? So everybody goes there to self-medicate, buy anti-malaria drug because it's readily available on the shelf. So when I thought about it, like, okay, how do we design this service so that we build around the existing user behavior and not send people to go and stay for 3 hours in the hospital like every other people would do? So what do? We started aggregating pharmacists, we started talking to pharmacists. In the service design chain, we have to talk to pharmacists and educate them on the best way to care for malaria, right? So we taught them how to use simple test for malaria before they give medication. We decided, which medication are the best. We trained these pharmacies on formularies, on how to identify malaria, how to do this. So we equipped the pharmacy with knowledge. Then we made the access cheap for people. So it's 500 naira. You don't have to break the bank to treat malaria. If you go to the hospital right now, you're going to pay 15,000 naira to treat yourself. But with 500 naira a month, you can treat malaria. So we've taken into account also that a lot of Nigerians are poor. They can't afford to be able for comprehensive healthcare. So we created a micro insurance plan that gives them access to cheap healthcare, right? And also, when these people are now sick, rather than them going to queue in the hospital, we locate the closest pharmacist to them and send them to that pharmacy for them to get tested, for them to get medication after they've been tested, and for them to get counseled by pharmacists. Because these pharmacists have been playing the role of public healthcare in the country for so long. So this is where service design comes in. It's a technology company, right? So, but what we do as a tech company in healthcare is way more than providing an app. It is providing a solution to a perplexing problem that Nigerians have, which is hundreds of thousands of people die from malaria every year. How do we make sure that the service is affordable, it is accessible, and it is quality? Leveraging existing pathways that people have. So that's the practical example of how you can do service design that works. But you don't just do the service design without, by you just thinking. You have to talk to the people involved in it. So we spoke with people that, like I asked Newton, how do you currently access care? Newton told us, 70% of the time I go to the pharmacy first, I self-medicate. Okay, how do we ensure that people are not just self-medicating and making sure they are being tested for it? So we created another service pathway for how malaria treatment is supposed to be administered, following the standard guidelines for it. We also started aggregating pharmacies all around so that whenever you need to visit the one, we are not sending you to 130 minutes away, we are sending you to the one that is very close to you. Are these things going to be done on an app? No. Their services, their user flows, their processes, operations that will allow people to be able to get the best and optimal care that is convenient and easily accessible to them. So being able to marry your service design with product design or user experience design is very important. So when you design for businesses, you want to, as much as possible, get information about how the things they are doing work. Or you are designing a fintech application. How many minutes will it take for you BVN validation to be done. How is this BVN validation even being done? How many API calls do they have to make? So when you understand, oh, one system will call another system and call another, you then write inside your product design and say, inside the UI and say, your BVN is currently being validated to be completed in 30 seconds. The user's expectation is managed. They are not vexing, they are not angry because you've put the consideration that, okay, this service must be delivered this particular way down to people. So you've incorporated that into operational processes, right? When you go out and you open a door and the door is opening to a side that is not supposed to be open to, service thinking allows you to understand that, okay, this experience is not supposed to go this way, this door is supposed to swing to the other side so that people can have good access or pathway to be able to enter their house. So as you go out about your day, start looking at regular things that services that have been delivered to you that you can improve or can be optimized best. As such, you'll be able to start noticing how best to even design user interfaces. So for example, at Wellites, we don't just call ourselves a product design team, we call ourselves a product experience design team, because what people get that makes them stay or come back to use a product is the experience they've got. And that experience is delivered through a service. So everybody that is involved in engaging your users or customer care, product specialists, the application, the branch touch points, your flyers, all those things that people will interact with along the way when they want to experience your brand, they must be well designed, well optimized to make sure that those people get the best experiences ever. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that very insightful contribution. I'm sure we all heard what Jeff said. And in the next few minutes, if you have any question relating to the contribution he made, please feel free to ask. Also, if you have any additions you want to add, please feel free to unmute your mic and say one or two things before we wrap up the session. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, so before we bring this to a close, I'll just call two students at random, to be sure everybody's following. So the first person I'm calling up here is Kayode. Kayode, are you here? Please unmute your mic. Let me ask you a few questions. Is Kayode on the call?
Good afternoon.
Oh, hi, Kayode. Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm at work. I'm just trying to shuffle in between so as not to miss the class.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not any serious question I'm asking. Did you get any new knowledge from this session we just had? Do you have any questions you might want to ask?
To be sincere, not really, but I still have to go through the class once again just to have a total view of everything that was taught today.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you so much. So the second person I'm calling before we end this is Oladipo Beshola. Can you mute your mic and say one or two things? Oladipo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so yeah, hi, good afternoon. So do you have any questions from the session we just had or contribution?
No, I don't really have a question. Oh, I actually understood what is said about the importance of service design in product design.
Awesome.
So it gave me like a more deeper experience of not just designing alone, but getting a whole picture of what you're actually doing for. It's a service, not just a product. So now I'm a medical student and getting to understand malaria drugs, getting it. When you try to solve a problem, you try to consider the other factors that may be involved in this design you're trying to make, not just creating a design without considering the people that are involved, the access to it, and also the time, and also the money, and also the every other thing that are involved. So it's like a whole picture, a full picture of what you're trying to design for. When people want to make decisions, a lot of things are involved. So we try to factor all these things before we create our designs. And also, I think the first person that talked in the person that took the session talked about involving stakeholders before you even maybe before you design or during the design process, so that you not just create a design that the person that maybe people that maybe it's a government kind of a project, and yet you are doing like a personal work, and when you do it finish, they are not so involved in it, and the stuff does not really work out well. So it's about telling people about our design process, posting it on LinkedIn, maybe Medium and all. So I got a lot of things from the class today, and I appreciate everyone for the people that actually taught us today. So it's a nice experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oladipo. So in the absence of no further questions or contributions, we'll bring this session to a close. A quick reminder for the last school students here, we'll be having the class by 9 a.m. tomorrow, so get ready for that. So thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you. Jeff, do you have any final remarks, or Brian?
None from me.
Okay, Brian, how about you?
No, none from me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Victor.
Okay, thank you everybody. So we'll talk tomorrow. Bye, guys.